John Persinger here, aka Prester John. The problem with dominant chords. Look, this is going to seem like a silly problem, but it's actually quite important. It's the naming of the dominant chord. Yes, this is a topic of semantics and nomenclature, but if you're communicating with other musicians, that is important too. So, here's the big issue. When you play a C major 7 chord, and you see it in a book, it's labeled C major 7. If you play a C minor 7, it's labeled C minor 7. But most frequently, if you play a C dominant 7, it's labeled C7. Now, that makes the assumption that you know that a C7 without a qualifier is a dominant chord. A C9 is also a dominant chord because it has the flat 7. We're going to get into the theory of this in a minute. So a C9, dominant chord. C13, dominant chord. C11, dominant chord. One starts to think, oh, if it doesn't have a qualifier, major or minor, or dominant, it is dominant. Well, that's true for the 7s, the 9s, the 11s, and the 13s, but it's not true for 6s, because a C6 is a major chord. It's not a dominant chord. And a C6-9, that is not a dominant chord. So it's very, very confusing. Academically speaking, and from a publisher point of view, this is probably never going to change. Not to mention the internet, you're never going to see this fixed, okay? So you have to memorize that dominant chords are the 7s, the 9s, the 13s, and the 11s. I always leave out the 11s because I don't play them very much. The 7s, the 9s, the 11s, and the 13s. But 6s are not dominant chords, and 6-9s are not dominant chords. So let's do a close-up of the guitar here, and we'll break down some of the theory. Also, print out the PDF. There's a link below that you can use and follow along with this, because the theory gets a little bit complicated. I'm going to stick mostly the theory of the dominant 7th chord. So if you don't know how chords are made, you might want to watch one of my other videos. I did one for Elixir Strings recently. That should be up and running relatively soon. But let's get into this dominant 7 music theory right now. Here we go. So the first thing you need to know is that a major chord is made with the 1, 3, and the 5. That's 1, 3, 5, C, E, G. Also, I just pointed out again, download the music for this, the PDF, it's in the link below. It'll be easier to follow along. 1, 3, 5. Now on the piano, that's relatively easy to see and play. And then 1, 3, 5, flat 7. That's what a dominant chord is. It is a major chord with a flat 7 or a minor 7. One of the problems for guitar players is that's not usually the way guitar players play a dominant 7. Much more common is to do this C7, or this C7, or you can add the pinky, or this C7. I'm also going to go ahead and show you can play that one like this. All right, we'll get to that in a minute. Now, all of those chords have the 1, 3, 5, flat 7 in them, but in different orders. So this chord, it's labeled 1, 5, flat 7, 3, 5. Very similar here. 1, 5, flat 7, 3, 5, 1. If I add the flat 7 here with the pinky, that's all I'm doing. So we've got these duplicated notes in some cases here. So that was the 1, the 5, the flat 7, the 3, but then the 5 again, and then the 1 again. This C7 doesn't have a 5. 1, 3, flat 7, 1. If I play the high string, that's 3 again. The 5 is a very easy note to take out of almost any chord. The theory is beyond what I want to talk about right now, but just know that if you're going to take a note out of a chord to make room for another note, the 5 is one of the first to go. So 1, 3, flat 7, 1, 3. No 5. This one is just 1, 3, flat 7. No duplicate notes. The thing you need to know about dominant chords is that all dominant chords have to have a 3 and a flat 7. Let's get to the higher numbered chords. Here's a C9. That is 1, 3, flat 7, 9. There's the 9. And back to now, we actually do have the 5 in there. I guess I should point this out too. If here's a major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, those are the notes I'm talking about. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, flat 7, 1. When you go up past the 1 again, they start over. So this is the 9. The 9 and the 2 are the same note. There's my C9. You can also play a C9 like this. That's 1, flat 7 is the second note. There's the 9, and there's the 3 right there. Now, I said earlier C11 is a dominant chord, and this is true as long as you have the 3rd in there. If you play this C11, that's actually a type of suspended chord because there is no 3, no major 3 or minor 3. Again, suspended chords are beyond the scope of this lesson. But if I throw in that 3rd, now I've got my C dominant 11 chord. C13 is the C9 with the pinky stretched up there. And then here's an easier C13, but I like this one, James Brown. And then this C13. So that gets you all your dominant chords. 7, 9, 11, 13. They all have flat 7s and 3s in them. Now let's go to the chords that have numbers but no qualifiers that aren't dominant chords. C6. That's the 1, the 6, the 3, and the 5. So there's no flat 7 in there. That really should be called C major 6. And then finally this C6-9. That doesn't have the 3rd. So that's the type of suspended chord. C6 sus9 would be the better thing to call that. This is terribly confusing. The big takeaway from here is that 7s, 9s, 11s, certain types of 11s, and 13s are all dominant chords, but 6s and 6-9s are not. Here's one of the other big problems with this 6 being not a dominant chord, but this 13 being a dominant chord, is that this 13 and this 6, they're the same note, just separated by an octave. So when it's in the low octave, generally, you call it a C6 and it's a major chord, but when it's a C13, it's got the flat 7 in there too. So it's terribly confusing. But these are things that you need to memorize if you're going to be able to communicate with other musicians and play what you say and say what you play. I hope you found this lesson useful. The reason I did it is because I was talking about these dominant chords not having always been called dominants. And a student said, oh my gosh, I never would have known that a 13 was a dominant chord. And I thought, well, this is great because this can't be the only student because this student did it. I certainly didn't know this for years and years and years as a player. And hopefully it clears up some of the theory that can be very, very difficult for guitar players especially to learn because the guitar layout is so awkward as well. So I hope you found it useful, and thank you so much for watching.